So then for men that don't think that there's a particular problem because of their culture and their background and what have you, and yet they know that probably, or they've heard that maybe things could be done, how can they connect with men that they can relate to?
Yes, that's a really good question, and it's something that has come up quite a lot, and more recently. So one interesting story which was shared with me just recently by a friend of mine is that, you know, what we don't often understand about people in the defence is they become conditioned through training going in, so they do all of this amazing training and they become conditioned to be a soldier that's able to respond to a command.
Right.
However, they don't do the same deconditioning when they leave.
Right.
So, and if we sort of link that with these behavioural patterns, what we're doing is we're not understanding that in order to develop an abuser aspect, this is something which has happened over time.
Yeah.
It's a conditioning.
Yeah, right.
What we need to do is to employ a deconditioning.
Yeah.
And this may replicate the similar environment or the scenarios that were going on in order to decondition. So the decondition might be exposure through talking about what used to go on.
Yeah.
Deconditioning might be, by taking the tension out of the body, relaxation, and these types of things. It might be using movement.
Right.
Do you see the idea? So so I wanted to really get this across that, you know, there's no rule of thumb that we can utilise in this area of working with these type of abuser aspect patterns because it's repetitive in nature.
Yeah.
And all we really know at the moment around DV is that there's two types: isolated and sustained repetitive patterns. What we don't know is the why.
Right.
Why these patterns continuously happen over and over again. We know that there's two parts of it. This is why in the book that I've co-authored that we go into detail about the mechanics behind these repetitive patterns.
Right.
We talk about, you know, things like, which is really interesting, we talk about where oftentimes the victim can become, again, the DV victim in adult life. So the victim of, say, sexual abuse and abuse can, but also as well, sometimes that isn't the case. Sometimes that isn't the case. So there's all of these different rules and observations about these patterns and how we sort of engage it. But what we do know is that they definitely increase in severity. And we also know that there's stages to it as well. There's is where we gain the pattern. Again, it's that conditioning. So we condition with the pattern. We maintain it. The pattern. And then we've got the opportunity to erase the pattern. And this is what we talk about in the book. Sometimes we see, you know, the person that experiences terror becomes the terrorizer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you know, so we've got all of these different scenarios, and again, we're using that paradigm around the behaviour, addictive personality, if you like, to really explain that in the mechanics. So that what we're doing is appealing to the perpetrator of DV so that they can get an understanding. Because the first step in healing or to change anything is to gain an understanding, is to bring conscious awareness to our behaviours. That's the first step. To then look at those controlling patterns. We're also sharing in the book around with the aim to provide an understanding for the victim and their families. So that they can understand what their part in that is. You know, they can understand that that this is it's not just an issue that the male perpetrator is portraying. There's also a partner that's involved in this, because this is a cycle. This is a cycle, and it's only really for our understanding and our conscious awareness can we then start to move towards erasing the patterns. And that's what we go on. We talk about, you know, victimology. We talk about all of these all of these different things
Yeah.
in order to give many different aspects
Right.
of where it's coming from.
Right.
One really important story we share, or something I think men can really link with, is a story from Star Wars.
Okay. Good.
Very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Because if we look at the Star Wars scenario, if we like,
Yeah.
and we look at Anakin Skywalker, and we look at the story, we look at his relationship with Padme, and
Padme, which one's that?
so she is the queen,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and we look at the relationship, and what we see is we see the initiation of the controlling patterns through this. So Anakin Skywalker, who becomes Darth Vader
That's
eventually,
right. That's right. Exactly. Yes.
what he observes is what he observes in the story is that he has no control over his mother dying.
Oh, right.
That's his first, exposure to the fragility and the uncertainty of life. He sees he couldn't control that. So then this fear builds up on him, this fear of wanting to control, where he wants to control Padme. He experienced this this vision where he sees Padme dies while having the baby.
Oh,
And
yes, I remember.
and that's what starts to drive him then. Then he gets this exposure to the dark side of the Force. And the dark side of the Force, what it promises him is through control and being part of this dark side of the Force, he's going to be able to control the outcomes, what happens to Padme.
Yeah.
Then what happens is Padme resists the dark side and doesn't like that side of Anakin. Then that dance of the repetitive pattern starts.
Right.
She then starts to see Anakin as a threat. She sees his controlling behaviour, and then the domestic violence cycle starts. And then we see it there.
Right.
And then if we flip the coin and we look at Luke Skywalker's journey, he has a very similar journey where he has to ultimately face his fears. And his fears are really his emotions. His emotions are represented in Darth Vader. You know, Darth Vader tempting him again who is actually his father, tempting him to join the dark side.
Yeah, right.
And again, this is what, if we look at this, really gives a good overview of how these patterns are developed. It's the need, or that is born out of having to control circumstances, driven by fear. So we've got the good side of the Force, and then we've got the dark side. You know, these light and dark, they live within all of us.
Yeah, of course,
you
absolutely.
know, and it's only really through our our strategies and practices and being able to make positive choices do we then take the role of the good man. And this is why we need groups like that where we're supported with positive male role models, which make it make it a little bit easier for us to start making the right choices. We can observe that. Unfortunately, Anakin Skywalker didn't have that positive role model that he really connected with. Yes, he had his, he had Yoda and etc., and Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
But he thought, his fear was again like was that they were out to get him.
Yeah.
And they wasn't giving him the right support.
Yeah, yeah. And that's an interesting situation because that's we all ultimately have the choice, and some guys do make the choice to destroy life in order to try and somehow feel good and not feel afraid. Sure. The paradox is then they have a major consequence to face after that, as in they will be severely punished. And some of them will suicide to avoid the punishment. So whatever happens, it's a very negative outcome to carry on down the dark side, if you like.
Sure.
So, nevertheless, though, there's always the opportunity to make another choice and to have a better quality of life, not just for the guy, but also for his partner and for his children.
Sure.
So the cycle doesn't continue. Would that be right, Dean?
Sure.
Because generally hurt people, damage people. As I'm sure you know. So